I wish I knew what happened, you know? Like, I just wish, I wonder, you know, will I ever find out what happened? Like, what could have happened? I just feel, you know, will it just be one of life's mysteries that's never solved? I think for a long time, everyone thought he just took off because he traveled, you know, like he liked to have adventures and explore, but that's different. You know, you just don't commit to something and then just pick up and leave. So I know in my heart that that's not what happened.
Somebody knows what happened with Kenley. There's no doubt in my mind somebody knows what happened with Kenley. People don't just vanish. People do not just vanish.
So my memories are that it was this corner that I last saw him, and he was on the other side of the street walking into town this way, and I was going back towards campus. And because I thought I'd see him later on the floor, Kroll Tower, I just gave him a wave, and that was all. So it's very strange to think of that as the last time I saw him.
The last time anybody saw him, really. It's the last reported sighting.
And of course, the last reported, any recorded sighting of him, which is just bizarre.
I remember the day Kenley and Kayreen both left for Acadia. I remember crying that day, and I don't normally cry, and that is like one of the few times that I remember crying.
Kenley and I had decided, you know, we're both going to Acadia that year, so we were both going to be first-year students. I just felt like we were at the beginning of this really cool adventure and something we're going to be doing together. We had my uncle, Johnny Angus's van, and it was packed full of things.
About mid-morning, maybe 10 o'clock, they left. It was beautiful, gorgeous September day.
As we got closer, you know, the feeling was like maybe a little heavy for him, and rather than on the excited side.
Kenley wasn't overly excited about going to university. He was very, I won't say anxious, but he was very concerned about Frosh Week.
I think both of us were a little apprehensive, not sure what to expect.
He didn't want to be victimized in any way. He didn't want to be picked on. He wanted to fly below the radar. And he did express that to his father.
Kenley indicated, you know, he said, well, you know, you could just drop me off at the airport, you know, on the way by. So you could sense that he was definitely having some doubts about committing to going to Acadia.
Kenley, you know, you think back on, you know, compared to the other first-year guys, this guy was was a fourth-year student. The other kids, it was their first time away from mommy and daddy. But this guy had hitchhiked, climbing trees in the wilderness. I says, wow, hats off to you. You sort of start seeing, you know, who pairs up with who. Tom Gordon. If there was one guy that Kenley hung around with, it was him. Those two were pretty tight.
My name's Tom Gordon. I came on exchange to Acadia University in autumn 1992, and I met Kenley on the 9th floor of Kroll Tower, and we became good friends. We hung out. We had another friend, Kirsten, who had a car. We used to take off and see a lot of the local sites.
My name is Kirsten Tomlinson, and in 1992, I met Kenley during my first year at Frosh Week. There was a barbecue at my residence, Chase. There was, a nice little courtyard, and they had a barbecue there to welcome the students, and Tower being, just across the way. I think they were also welcome to the barbecue, and so he was sitting in the courtyard off by himself, and I was attracted to that. I thought, well, why don't I go over and introduce myself? Kenley was, quite a shy fellow. I'd say more on the introverted side as opposed to the extroverted side.
The key word I would use would be laid back. He always wore a baseball cap. Every time I saw him, he wore the same baseball cap.
He also had, a real zest for life, if you will, and just the most charismatic smile ever. He had a really just a warm sense about him.
During those first couple of weeks, we would often make use of Kirsten's car and go out to a couple of places. One was called the Look Off, which is an amazing view over the valley. And we went to a place called Three Pools, which is a beautiful area where you could swim.
We'd often, go down to the Anvil and have some drinks. That bar is quite infamous. There was a certain camaraderie amongst us, being mature students.
Like, he didn't avoid people, unless you make it say, well, closing your door is avoiding people. But if you spoke to him, he spoke to you back. But he'd be never the one to initiate a conversation. And Kenley was a night owl. Like, he'd be up all hours of the night. You could sit in that, like, I'd come back from walking around the camp. Like, you think about it, I'd be up till 2 o'clock in the morning drinking coffee, doing campus patrol. So I'd be wired, I'd come back to the lounge. I could be sitting in the lounge with Kenley, he wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't talk to you. He'd be happy in the silence of watching TV. Now, in hindsight now, you might think that Kenley's behaviors would be out of the ordinary. But at the time, I didn't think I just thought he was just a shy guy kept to himself.
So this is Corkham's Island. It was unseasonably warm that year, and so we came down and got on the jet skis and had a weekend down here at my dad's.
Kirsten brought it up that we should come and experience this house on the coast.
My house has always been a place, where my friends have been welcome.
So we drove down, as far as I remember, after lunch on the Friday.
Yeah, we came down here on a Friday evening and then unpacked and got a little settled and decided that we'd go into town and go and have a few drinks at the local bar.
And we went to a club which was a little bit, we all agreed, sort of redneck, not the greatest, but we had a bit of a dance and a couple of drinks and then headed back.
On Saturday, we headed out onto the water and spent the day on the jet skis and burning around and having a great time.
Kenley was really relaxed. He was, as far as I could tell and as far as I remember, he was loving it. I've got a couple of photos of him coming in on the jet ski. He's smiling.
He likes speed too. Trying to check each other off the jet skis and, just having a good time. It seemed like, he was up for that adventure. And any adventure, really. He was definitely an adventurous spirit. And I admire that in people.
In the evening on Saturday, we met a couple that came over for dinner, and they just returned recently from a holiday to Morocco. Part of Saturday night was something called hot knives, which is where you heat a knife on a flame, and you put it on a piece of marijuana and inhale the smoke that comes off it, kind of thing. I think it was the first time I'd ever seen it done.
It was very comfortable. You know, it seemed very natural, you know, in terms of the progression of our relationship.
Sunday we woke up and again it was a beautiful day. I think the plan had been originally to go back a little bit earlier to university, but it was just too tempting to go and do it all again. So we went again and got some wetsuits, and we had an absolutely amazing day again. I can remember one of the vivid memories that I had down in my diary was of taking the jet ski into Lunenburg Harbor and seeing it from the harbor. And that was just a stunning view.
Kenley arrived at Acadia University in Wolfville a couple of days prior to the first day of class. The first weekend that he was there, he attended Corcombs Island in Lunenburg County with some friends.
Monday, September 14th, 92, we have Kenley back at Acadia.
He was back, attended class all that week.
He and I shared calculus class together every Tuesday and Thursday from 8:30 to 10. And then he and his friend from high school, Jill Archibald, shared chemistry class together Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8:30. And so on their way out of class, I had my chemistry class at 9:30. So often I would see them, you know, passing by. And I felt like we were really starting to get into our groove.
So the week after the Corcombs Island trip, we continued to do a little bit of local exploring. I think we went back to 3 pools. Being at the beginning of the year, the workload wasn't too great at that point, and I think it was, another great week. There was nothing really out of the ordinary.
Chris was at Acadia, Chris Hardy was at Acadia, and he was a friend of ours in high school. And Kenley and him had seen each other the year before out in Vancouver. And so there was that friendship that was built from their group in high school. They were all within that friend group. Chris had seen Kenley down on Main Street. Kenley was actually walking from the outskirts of town towards the university, which was, to me, it's like an odd place to be for him. And then Chris was walking back home, as far as I understand. So they met each other on Main Street.
So this is where the meeting would have been, if this is the correct location. This is where we would have run into each other. This is where the gas station was, which was a Petrocan or an Esso, I think, and it would have been kind of the building structure would have been more on this side. I was walking down here. Kenley would have been coming through the parking lot, and I think it was, I didn't recognize him right away as he's walking through the parking lot, but maybe as he got very close, or maybe as close as these concrete stanchions here, we made the connection, and I remember going, Kenley, or something like that. I think I recognized him first, or maybe it was around the same time. I'm not 100% sure. He was not very talkative at all. Very, very quiet. It wasn't like a whole bunch of camaraderie to it or anything like that. I assume that maybe he was out on the dikes, maybe he did a joint, or there was something up anyway. It just wasn't easy. He didn't seem to be himself, is the way I would put it.
I do remember talking to Chris, and he was saying that Kenley made some comment that he was doing laundry or something like that, which I thought was very odd because there's laundry facilities in Tower.
So this is the laundromat, which is just up the road a little bit from the gas station, and I remember asking him what he was doing at some point down here, and probably would have been pretty early on in the conversation, and he said he was doing laundry. That's my memory of it. Would have been weird that he was doing laundry. He didn't have a laundry bag with him. He was going back up to Tower, not waiting around to get his laundry if he did have laundry here, and I'm sure Tower has their own laundry services for all the students, so it was an odd response to the question.
I always was very confused by why Kenley was on Main Street. Like how far out of town he was, and that he was walking back into town.
I had told him I had a vehicle and I was going to the liquor store and I could drive him up to Tower, save him the hike up the hill or whatever, and so he agreed he wanted to do that. I don't remember specifically the trip to the liquor store, or the only thing I'm thinking is that maybe Kenley grabbed a 6-pack or something like that to go up the tower, and maybe that was part of the attraction of getting the drive too, was, oh yeah, well, you're going to the liquor store too, and go up the hill, great. At some point I would have dropped him off either at the entrance on the other side or this entrance. It makes more sense that it was that entrance because it's the first way up the hill from the direction we were coming. This would have been the last time I saw him.
So the last time that I saw Kenley was at the tower party.
The tower party was a huge occasion. There was a lot of hype, a lot of build up to it.
It was on a Friday evening. It would have been at their residence.
I remember it started on one of the floors, and then all the floors congregated down in the bottom area where the main party was. And the party was absolutely huge.
I'm visualizing him, kind of standing rather James Dean against a pole, just looking a little bit aloof.
Unfortunately, I can't remember anything about Kenley being in that party.
I know that, with the tower party, I just know that he was pretty drunk.
What I remember is that Kenley had done some, drinking in his room prior to the party, and when he arrived at the party, he had a lot to drink already.
I don't know a lot of the details. Over the years, I'd heard there was something in the bathroom where he was kind of almost passed out in the bathroom.
I was concerned, and I do remember going up to Tom and saying, is everything okay with Kenley?
Kenley, when I did see him, it did seem like he had had too much to drink.
And I recall even going up to Kenley and just saying, hey, is everything okay? And yeah, everything's fine. Carry on.
He was, draping himself over some of the women at the party, including my girlfriend.
I did observe him at the party speaking to a friend of mine, a girl that I had also just met a few weeks earlier, a freshman.
I'm not sure if Kenley realized she was my girlfriend or maybe he didn't care. But anyway, he was hitting on her, and so he and I had a bit of a disagreement that he needed to stop immediately.
But I just really don't know the level of how drunk he was, and if he pissed off a lot of people that night with his behavior.
Didn't come to anything. I just said I'll deal with it with Kayreen in the morning because I didn't have really a strong relationship with Kenley.
I'm really not sure. I feel like that's a huge mystery to me. I probably would have been there if I was at Acadia that weekend.
Everybody was used to Kenley being a very quiet person. His complete personality change I was kind of surprised to see that.
Sunday is when I got back from Halifax, and that's when I ran into Mike, and I was also, had a plan that I wanted to set up for the week. And so I went to see Kenley in his room around 4 o'clock on Sunday. When I came in, I was planning to just kind of touch base with him because I felt with Mike, because Mike was a friend of mine, that I wanted to make sure that everything was cool with just saying hey, he just kind of said you were a little bit out of line, and I just wanted to touch base with him with that. When I came in, he was sitting on his bed, and I just remember him sitting like this, in his, he's just very, very quiet, almost like he knew he had been out of line, and maybe that feeling you have when you drank too much over the weekend and you just feel remorseful. And, I just sort of talked to him, and then we made our plan for the week. We set up a time for Monday night for us to get together and do some of our calculus homework together, because we had our calculus class on Tuesday morning.
Todd Barker was the resident assistant the year that Kenley was at Acadia for 1992. Todd Barker did give evidence to the police that he had knocked on the door to give him it was a piece of paper he had to sign for some agreement or something, and that Kenley just barely opened the door and it looked like he was ironing.
He's reluctant to open the door. He cracks the door a little bit. The RA says, I have the impression that he was ironing. I could never put those together. I could never see how that fit in.
I think I read somewhere something about how there's some anecdote related to that room agreement signing where, like, you went to the door and you kind of opened it a crack. Like,
Yeah, exactly. I do recall that. And I now have gotten accustomed to, Kenley's behaviors. That didn't seem abnormal to me because that was his mode of operation. That's how he operated. Like, if you knocked on his door, he'd only open it a crack. Like, he just poked his head out.
Was he ironing or something that night? Do you have any remembrance of that?
I can't recall now. He had no ironing board. That would go against completely, his lifestyle, I think, because like I said, he lived pretty Spartan.
Nobody hardly irons at all, but he did. This is just one of the quirks with Kenley. He did have an iron. He would iron his clothes. That is something he would do.
The only thing I can take from that is that Kenley doesn't want anyone in that room at that time for a reason.
Kenley was last sighted by a friend at a bank machine in Wolfville.
Tom Gordon, Kenley's friend, was the last person to see him on the 21st.
So having got money out of the ATM, I headed back towards campus. The plan was to go and have a shower and get ready for my evening class. I reached this spot here. And my memory of that day and of the last time I saw Kenley was that I saw him from here across the other side of the street. Because of the distance, I gave him a wave only, so I didn't have a personal catch-up, one-to-one. He was wearing his trademark baseball cap and just sort of casual clothes. He didn't look any way out of the ordinary, like he was in a hurry, or I can't remember if he had a backpack or anything, but he certainly didn't look like he was particularly going anywhere. Just seemed, as I recall it now, to be strolling towards town on a normal Monday.
On Monday, I had my chemistry class at 9:30, and Kenley had his chemistry class at 8:30, and I do remember not seeing him come out of the classroom. And if I recall, I remember seeing Jill and just kind of quickly, like, did you see, was Kenley in class? Kind of doing like a quick check.
The day I remember phoning him was the Monday, September 21st. And the reason I phoned was I had got several pieces of mail for him and I wanted to know what he wanted to do with them, how, if he wanted to send them to him or that type of thing. So I phoned his number where he lived in Kroll Tower, and it was a pay phone for the floor. And the person that picked up the phone, it was about 5 o'clock, and the person that picked up the phone said, no, Kenley's gone down for supper. And this I remember, very distinctly.
So then I tried to contact Kenley on Monday for the study session for calculus for Tuesday morning, but I couldn't get a hold of him. So I did call, and there was a note on his door when I did go over a few days later.
Her and Kenley were supposed to study together, I believe, on Monday night. Kenley didn't show up.
So then Tuesday, we had calculus in the morning, and he didn't show up to class. And so I don't recall a lot from that day, whether, I'm sure I had other classes, and I probably had a lab, and, it's like, again, mental note, that's odd.
Up between Monday and Wednesday, there were several attempts made by Kenley's mother and his sister Kayreen to make contact with him without success.
So then on Wednesday, I had my classes again, and Kenley was not in class. And I had an afternoon class, and I'm pretty sure Mike Hussey and I shared that class.
Kayreen asked me if I had seen Kenley, and I said, no, I haven't seen him, but she thought it was odd that he hadn't reached out to her for the last few days because they were quite close.
At this point, really starting to get, somewhat concerned, but not to the level of panic. And he's like, well, let's go check.
So we're finally on Wednesday, the 23rd, Kayreen went to Kenley's room.
But I still remember, like, just as if it's right now, Mike and I walking up the hill and just talking almost like someone's odd behavior. Like, oh, did you happen to see, have you seen Kenley? And like, oh, he wasn't in calculus this morning or yesterday morning. And I just remember, not necessarily being all that worried at that point. So Mike and I arrived on that Wednesday, and his room is a 904. And I remember seeing notes on the door. And so the room was dark, there weren't any lights on. And, almost like you can see the note on the door there. There was like, one was like, call your mom, and I think call your sister. And then when I came out, I looked to the left, and Todd Barker, the RA, was coming up the hallway, and you could sense that he was worried, he was concerned, and I remember, that he indicated like he wasn't sure what he'd find behind the door. And to me, like what it brought up, the vision that it brought up was just like he might have like committed suicide, and don't be surprised if he's hanging in his room. I just always remember that vision or that feeling. I do slightly remember the closet, being open and seeing like his clothes and like the books over on the side and the pie plate with the like few cigarettes in there. But it didn't look like he had packed up and left. I just remember it looking, like as if Kenley had just gone to class. It didn't look packed up, and it didn't look put together, like as if he had tidied up or anything. There are stacks of books on the desk, and I think the closet door was partially opened, and his toiletries were on the dresser, and from what I remember, the bed was unmade.
Nothing really stood out to me in the room. It was just like someone had just left to go to lunch, and so nothing really looked like it had been disturbed, or there was no changes in the room.
I remember going back to my residence and going into my RA's room, and she had a personal phone in her room, and I called my mom, tried calling my mom, and she didn't answer, and then I called my dad, and I talked to my dad, and he came down the next day.
On Thursday, the 24th, is when Alan, Kenley's father, goes to the Wolfville police and reports Kenley missing.
Oh, it's just so hard. I just wish somebody would really come out and give us some information that we don't have. I just want to find him and find him alive and well.
Kayreen and Kenley Matheson had both just started their first year of university here at Acadia. Kenley was planning to major in biology.
I think maybe he might be out there somewhere. He might be mixed up a bit, or, just going through emotional time, or I guess it's hard to pinpoint. I really have no positive theories where he's at or whatever. I think that's what the frustrating part about it is.
We approached initially at, once we filed a missing person, we approached the case as a missing person file. We couldn't declare that it was a homicide. I mean, he had no body, he had no motive.
We hoped and I think thought that, there was more of a possibility that he had left the area on another excursion out west or to another country, as he had done, reported to us in the past.
Here's an individual that had acquired some experience. I think he's in Latin America, if my memory serves me correct. He also worked northern Alberta or British Columbia planting trees.
From what I recall from the preliminary investigation, we were exploring, where he might have went to, as opposed to whether something happened to him.
Foul play didn't enter my mind at all, for some reason.
Because he traveled to Mexico and Belize and Guatemala and hitchhiked and had a motorcycle, it was assumed that he just decided to pick up and leave.
You know, we really didn't have a whole lot of theories to start with. We figured it was just a missing young man and we needed to find him.
I think it was a mystery. We didn't know what happened to him.
We checked all the airlines and bus routes. We had it on the news, radio.
And then, we spoke to witnesses, we spoke to the family, and, people that had seen him in certain locations of Wolfville or thought they had.
We searched the room for any possible clues or evidence.
We didn't consider it a crime scene, so we didn't secure it, we didn't do any forensics.
We treated Kenley Matheson room as a missing person room. We didn't treat that as a homicide included there. I mean, we couldn't find any traces of a struggle or blood.
There was nothing out of the ordinary in his room. It wasn't turned upside down. There was nothing. It was just like he just walked out the door and was planning on coming back.
I found a little bit of hash oil, but I mean, that's nothing for a college student, university student back then.
His blue Helly Hansen jacket was gone. There's a pair of suede loafers that were gone and a pair of his jeans and his Lakers hat.
I asked Karine, is there something missing in his room? Does he have money? He was full of money from tree planting. So I started asking questions. And she said there's nothing missing in his room except for his shaving kit.
I do know his passport was still left in his room, but his backpack was gone.
And I said something else. And she said, we've been to the paper and there's an ad, Greenpeace ad missing. It's cutting from the newspaper.
So I believe I contacted somebody in Toronto in Greenpeace, the outfit, the Greenpeace, and I might even send some posters up. And they couldn't confirm that Kenley was there.
One of the questions I always had was, in his room were some cigarette butts. I don't know whatever happened to those cigarette butts. And I would love to have, as an investigator, I'd love to have the DNA off of those cigarette butts.
I mean, we didn't really, all we collected, jotted some names down and stuff like that. We didn't really seize anything in the room because we wanted to leave it the way it was, but we're looking for anything out of the ordinary.
Unless there's something outrightly suspicious, then we didn't secure it as a crime scene.
So see, the room was not treated as a crime scene because it was automatically assumed Kenley was a runaway.
I think, another mistake, maybe we should have sealed the room off. Got forensic ident come in. With that, maybe that's, but we never thought of doing that now because it was just a missing person.
The room wasn't ribboned off. There was no fingerprints taken. There was no list category of, the items that were in his room, anything done at all in case there was anything else, but that, he actually just flew off and left his room and didn't tell anybody.
I do remember my dad and we were back at Kenley's room, and there were, as I recall, 2 police officers that were with us, and we were assessing the situation. And I remember Todd Barker being out in the hallway, and he was near the elevator, and there was a couple of other of the first-year students, and he was roughhousing with them, enough that we all 4 of us kind of stopped and looked out because it was distracting.
He's being either over helpful or he's making jokes. He's saying things that just don't make them feel comfortable. They're saying things that in their opinion are inappropriate.
And I remember him saying oh, my frosh are beating me up out here, making light of whatever was going on. And I just remember feeling that seemed odd.
We did contact with the RRA, the residence who's responsible for the floor. So I remember, we talked to him and made a few inquiries. And he said the last time he remember seeing Kenley, he wasn't sure of the day before or day after he went missing. So he was, in iron his shirt in his room. Looks like he was going to go out somewhere, iron his shirt in his room. And the RRA seemed a bit nervous. I know he had a conflict with Kenley, but he seemed a bit nervous during the statement.
There was always a discrepancy on when he was last seen. And so he was seen by Todd Barker on the Monday, which would have been the 21st of September in '92. And he clearly said that he saw him at 10 o'clock in his room. And I remember that, there's a lot of things that are fuzzy, but I know that for sure because that was the day that he was declared as when he disappeared, because that's when he was last seen.
Well, over the years, there's, whether it was the 20th or the 21st, the Sunday or the Monday, there's been some discrepancy there as to which date it was. I can't speak or speculate as to why that is.
I remember, asking him afterwards, like, are you sure you saw him on Monday? Because nothing added up to him seeing him Monday. It just did not make sense the way that the timeline was, because no one really saw him Monday. He wasn't in class. And then all of a sudden he's in his room at 10 o'clock ironing, and Todd gives him a piece of paper in his room.
From what Karen told me, and you're right there at the time, it's the actual time, and, just Karen literally having it by the throat. Are you sure? Are you sure? And he says, Monday night, which you wouldn't get confused, I wouldn't think, at that point in time.
So that was the last sighting of Kenley for 2 years. So then 2 years later, Todd changes the date back to the Sunday. It's like he made a correction with the police and said that I saw him Sunday night at 10 o'clock. My mistake. So then that was just taken at face value. So now the last sighting of a missing person completely changes, by 24 hours.
Why is the last time he's seen changing? Why is it that we have an individual that says he saw him on Monday, and then several years later saying they saw Kenley Matheson? No, I was mistaken. It was Sunday. And there's any multitude of answers for that. They were trying to hide something. They were trying to protect something or someone. They honestly made a mistake. They're realizing that story does not fit with the rest of it. So now somehow we have to very subtly but definitively change that story. It could be any one of those. So to me, it's suspicious that it changes, but it's not surprising.
If I had to get a room agreement signed from him, we had our resident assistant meetings on Sunday. Because think about it, there was always a football game on Saturday, right? So everything going up until that week, the Don, Steve DeSapis, was completely occupied with football. So if I had to have him sign a room agreement, it would have been after that meeting on Sunday.
I think I remember even asking him, I said, did you have any knowledge or anything involvement with the disappearance?
Do you think that the RA, Todd Barker, may have been involved with Kenley's disappearance?
It's possible. It's possible that the RA was involved in Kenley's disappearance.
Kenley was last sighted by a friend at a bank machine in Wolfville, I believe on September 21st, 1992. And later that day, he was seen walking westwardly on Main Street in Wolfville, down near where the arena is. And that's, I believe he was carrying a backpack at the time, and that's the last time that he's been reported seen.
We have someone reporting seeing Kenley on Monday, twice, once at the bank machine and once walking out of town. The ATM on Main Street, it was 2 p.m. that they were seen at the ATM, and then a few hours later, around 4, is when the same individual says they see Kenley walking out of town.
There was one individual that I had notes on that I located that had said thought he'd seen him downtown around the Royal Bank parking lot having a backpack on and a purple shirt. My recollection as well is that there was another sighting of him around the bus stop.
The last person that said they saw him, he was walking east past, walking west past the university parking lot by the Acadia Arena, Main Street.
So Tom Gordon's description, as I heard it later, was he's seen him around 2 o'clock at the Royal Bank building. Tom again sees him at 5 o'clock. He has on jeans and a cap and a backpack and a t-shirt, and he is heading out of town. And I always thought it was towards Halifax, where, he would be able to catch hitchhike better, catch a plane, train, or whatever. But he was heading the other way down towards New Minas, Kentville. And Tom Gordon was like going across over to the gym at the time. You know, they weren't in close contact, and that is the last time that is reported that Kenley was seen.
So my Monday, the 21st of September, was another average day. It always involved me walking right through the center of the campus. On the right here, we've got the Students' Union building. That's where things like the Axe were, which was one of the bars that we used to go to. And my classes were all at the bottom of the campus. So I had most likely 3 classes that day. They would have all been up until around lunchtime. And then I went and had lunch with Frank. And we probably would have gone either to Wheelock Hall or to one of the other halls. There was one more where you could eat lunch. After lunch, there was a tennis tournament that was taking place, the intramural tennis tournament. So I wanted to get some practice in for that. So Grizz and myself, Grizz was a guy on the 9th floor of Crowell Tower. We decided to play a game after lunch, got some practice in. And I had some time free until my evening class. So I came down here to get money out of the ATM. It's all changed a little bit since I was here. There used to be a post office. I think a post office right next door to the ATM. And a restaurant called Mr. B's. I remember having a couple of dates, but all changed now. The ATM is still here. Must be this bank here. Is that a bank? I guess, right? I would have come back from the ATM, which is a little bit further, and I would say, for example, that I was standing on the other side of the road, and I would have seen Kenley from either this corner or a little bit further, but certainly far enough away to not stop and have a conversation. He was wearing his trademark baseball cap and just sort of casual clothes, jeans and stuff. I can't remember if he was carrying a backpack or anything, but he certainly didn't look out of the ordinary, like he was going somewhere or even in a hurry or anything.
So you only saw him that one time on the Monday? You didn't see him 2 separate occasions?
Not as I remember, just that one time, down here on Main Street. Yeah.
We checked Kenley's room at 904 Crowell Tower with myself, it was Constable Van Herk at the time. Shaving gear, face cloth, towels gone. Spoke to Tom Gordon, who had last seen Kenley at 2:40 p.m. at Royal Bank in Wolfville. Kenley walked past the rink, heading west, wearing a purple t-shirt, small black knapsack. And that's exactly what I had in my notes that I found in my notebook.
It was surreal. It was surreal because there just didn't seem to be a context. He didn't seem to have any apparent trouble in his life that was obvious to anybody. Acadia student missing. Anxious Inverness County family seeks news. It's been just over 2 weeks since Alan Kenley Matheson was reported missing by his father. Kenley, as his dad calls him, is a first-year Acadia University student who was last seen in a university residence September 21st. He was reported missing 3 days later. We just want to hear from him and know that he's okay, his father, Alan Matheson, said from Glendale, Inverness County, earlier this week. He's been on his own for a couple of years and never did this before, especially to leave college. He was pretty psyched up about it. He was always good in school, an honor student. He's old enough to make his own decisions, for sure. It's just the idea of not knowing. If we just knew anything. Kenley's 20 years old. He's 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighs 150 pounds, and has green eyes and brown hair, which he wears short on the sides and slicked back in front. He wears a gold hoop earring in his left ear. When last seen, he was wearing blue jeans, a purple t-shirt, a blue Helly Hansen mountain coat, dark brown suede loafers, and a purple LA Lakers ball cap. Kenley's sister, Kayreen, 18, is also at Acadia. She was the last member of the family to have contact with him the day before he disappeared. Then, they were supposed to have a math assignment done, and she couldn't get a hold of him, said Mr. Matheson. Everybody's worried. So far, we've heard nothing.
Well, at the time, everyone had a theory.
By this stage, everyone has started to talk about it.
It was a mystery what happened here.
There was like the TV reports that were on TV, and it just seemed like, you know, very surreal to me, all of it.
The common hypothesis at the time was that he had tried Acadia for a few weeks and then decided to leave and go out on his own.
People speculating, you know, that he went to South America. I remember that one, went to South America and just wanted to get lost type of thing.
The posters went up, and there was just, I think, a lot of like misinformation.
I've had friends that have told me Kenley was involved in the drug world.
Suicide was a rumor. I believe in my mind, I mean, he was hitchhiking.
He pissed off the wrong people, and maybe those wrong people followed him here to Wolfville.
Could he have run into someone with a very violent past?
Might have been beaten to death or something, or some foul play like that. He got down back to Corcomb's Island, and something happened there with that place.
Could he have run into someone who was suspect in other crimes?
That he had wandered off on the tidal flats or had gone to some place like Cape Split.
Three Pools.
The dike system.
Blomidon.
The Bay of Fundy is right there, so.
The highest tides in the world.
Highest tides in the world.
There's human trafficking.
Counties.
Rogue cops.
There was an individual that had a reputation for being far more aggressive than he needed to be.
You know, another theory, maybe something happened at the dorm, the residence, and someone tried to cover it up.
Maybe he did get in a disagreement with someone about maybe a girlfriend or something like that.
There was a very strong possibility that Kenley was bisexual.
A homosexual encounter that had gone wrong.
Is it possible that Kenley may have been at a party and made a move on someone, or vice versa?
Maybe he was hit on or picked up because he was homosexual. He got into the wrong car, the wrong person.
I did hear last year from a couple of friends that they had heard that he never left the valley. And I took that to mean he was killed and buried up in the valley somewhere.
So much more than a slice of life. Pizza the dog.
Have you ever heard of Kenley Matheson?
No, not that name. It's not familiar.
He was an Acadia student who went missing about 25 years ago.
Oh, at three pools. Yes. Okay. Now okay, that's his name.
How did you heard about him?
Well, he's just disappeared. We actually did a search up there to see if we could find any remnants of evidence just 2 years ago. It's still active. I mean, we still haven't found anything, but the case is still open as far as I know.
Have you ever heard of Kenley Matheson?
Matheson?
Yeah. He was an Acadia student who went missing many years ago.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that story?
No.
Did you find another twig? Did you find another twig? Taking it all on, ain't nothing too big. Pizza the dog. Is it still a little too high?
Have you guys ever heard of Kenley Matheson?
Who's sorry?
Kenley Matheson.
No, I can't say I have.
He was an Acadia student who went missing many years ago. Have you ever heard of him? He lived in Tower.
I don't think so.
Pizza the dog. Pizza the dog. Pizza the dog. So much more than a slice of life. Pizza the dog.
Do people remember in Wolfville Kenley Matheson and that disappearance, or is it sort of gone out of the memory of the town?
There are a few people that still know, but I would say it's probably disappeared. But there are a few people. I was here last year and somebody remembered it. So nobody this time while I've been selling tickets, but last year definitely. So yeah, there's some people around.
So much more than slice slice of life, eat for the dog. Thank you.
My wife and I started the store in 1971, calling it the Market because it was called the Wolfville Meat Market. So we stripped off Wolfville and we stripped off meat and we left Market because we couldn't afford a sign. And we initially started out as a head shop, selling pipes and papers and all kinds of hippie paraphernalia. And we just expanded that into clothing and into music and other things as the years went along. Some of my old customers. Kenley Matheson disappeared from Wolfville in 1992. Very strange, very odd situation. That's never been anything occur like this that I've ever heard of before. We hadn't had a murder or something strange like that happen since 1879 in Wolfville. We had a local town police force that was very competent in checking doors and being on the street and being aware of the community. But as far as being able to work on serious crime cases that involved more than just a local knowledge, I think they were overwhelmed.
I think it was typical of any, I'll say, small-town police force.
It was a big fall for us. We were a small municipal police service.
My recollection that it wasn't handled specifically by one or two officers and being investigated. I think it went from shift to shift, by officer to officer.
I wish we had more resources at the time, because just myself and maybe another constable.
Everybody in the department had done something at one time or another in it, and but the chief, I guess, would have been he would have been here daily, so he would have done that, John McLeod.
And then I remember saw a few psychics.
The consistent things from all the different psychics have been
Kenley may have been near water.
Water, railway line.
A lot of times in the woods.
And may be close to the highway.
And like a blow to the back of the head.
The psychic in Bedford was really good. She said, Kenley's alone on this dump.
She said, he is no longer, with his bones and his teeth.
Kenley's, he's among the dead. He's in an old junkyard.
There's been none of them that have said he's still alive.
Rumors that Kenley went to the local bar here in town, the Anvil, which in the 80s and early 90s was a rough bar. It was a work tradesman's bar. It was where people went on a Friday night after work to have a few beers, but almost invariably the Anvil was a spot where disagreements were settled with fists. But the speculation locally was that he had had a confrontation in the bar with somebody or a group of people, and whether or not they had something to do with his disappearance or not, that was always the speculation.
It isn't that hard to hide a body in Nova Scotia if you know where to hide a body in Nova Scotia.
My speculation is, and I'm just saying this was just speculation, he pissed somebody off about something, and whoever he pissed off was mad enough and man enough that they did something about it. I say man enough, I don't mean that in that way, but I just mean mad, testosterone fueled enough that if this person made him mad for some reason, then he acted on it, and perhaps went too far, and then there was no coming back.
Nova Scotia has a lot of farmland, and especially the Annapolis Valley. I was having a conversation with a friend last year who is a farmer, and I said to him, where do all these people go? Why are these people disappearing, and where are they disappearing to, and why is it that 20 years later we still can't find some of these dead bodies if they're in fact dead? And he goes, Bev, look around you. See that land over here? Way, way back, I own all that land. Other farmers can say the same thing about their own land. You can go missing on that property, and no one will ever find you. You might be in some gully somewhere, and you can be buried, and no one will ever find your body.
Somebody knows. Somebody somewheres knows something. But if nobody ever talks, or nobody ever says anything, then It's all just speculation.
At the time, we didn't do a search. We were criticized for that.
You know, when somebody gets missing, is a life involved. You have to go out right away looking for that person, not do paperwork. One dog, one good bloodhound, will do a job of 100 people.
We did receive a call from Leo Caldi, who has a search and rescue dog.
I was hoping to have a scent article belong to the person, have the opportunity to take the dog in his quarters where he lived, and let the dog do the job.
He did some of his own searches, I believe, and reported to us, but there was nothing was found.
I never put my dog over there. Like here, this is false. They say Leo Caldi, that was 930328. Leo Caldi, you're a tracking dog. No. What a joke.
Kenley wasn't a local man, so the local community, although we were interested in what happened, I don't think there was the same sort of urgency or the same sort of... The community wasn't as upset as it would have been if it was some local person that had disappeared. There would be the family here, there would have been the relatives here, there would have been, I think, a bigger push to have found information about what happened or what might have occurred.
I believe if they will give the opportunity to my unit, we will find the person. We will find him if they will give the opportunity, but they did not give us the opportunity. They pressure off. Everything under control. We are in charge. And this is how the story ended up.
There is a bit of a mentality that people who are students are going to come and go, and people who aren't rooted into the life of the Valley are going to come and go. Maybe that affects the outlook of some people in terms of their empathy and the compassion they are able to extend to others. I hope not. It certainly wasn't the case for me. I don't consider anybody from Cape Breton to come from away. In fact, I consider Cape Breton to be pretty primary to the history of this province.
Locally, it was a story in the news and people were talking about it, but after it kind of went off the news, it just disappeared.
And then over the next weeks and months, it was just a matter of, I remember going to the Wolfville Police Department, you know, walking down there by myself, and it just seemed like very surreal to me, all of it, and just trying to cope with everything. And then I know that my dad, him and his wife Myrtle came down to get Kenley's stuff, which would have been about November. And there was no inventory, no pictures taken of his room. I mean, the police, they truly didn't treat it as a crime.
His whole disappearance was just taken as, again, young kid blew off into the wilderness.
It was just assumed because of his history, because of his lifestyle, that Kenley just decided he didn't want to play anymore and he left.
There was never any suspicion of foul play. Anyone who gave a statement, nothing was really followed up on to, make sure that it was authentic.
With missing persons, if there's no crime scene, or if there's nothing to create suspicion of a person being missing, then evidence could be lost in the initial report of somebody being missing.
And looking back on it, I think it was just a combination of, the Wolfville Police Department, not knowing how to handle it. And also there's jurisdictions, because at that time the RCMP were not part of the, the Wolfville Police. So then they don't come in and assist, even though it would have been a proper step to do because it's the right thing to do.
And Kenley's case was certainly one of the ones that fell through the cracks along with countless others.
If you could turn back the clock, being there, you'd always wish you could have done more, knowing had there been something else that stuck out, the case should have been treated differently.
I definitely believe that Andrew Johnson had something to do with Kenley's disappearance.
What if Andrew Johnson was there that weekend? And what if him and Kenley got to meet each other, create some type of friendship? And what if, Andrew Johnson came to Acadia a week later and called Kenley casually and, hey, you want to, go hang out? And what if Kenley goes down the stairs and hops in this guy's car and he's never seen or heard of again?
Did you kill Kenley Matheson?